That's where all the fun started, but it didn't stop there. Of course, we had Sunday Night Football, and it was a doozy with the Lions somehow pulling out the win on the road at Houston, despite Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions. We got to hear from Goff after the game on somehow winning on a brutal night.
I didn't feel like I was playing all that bad. I was seeing things well. The tip ball, ultimately I got to take care of the ball, but they were making some good plays and some things that weren't going our way, and I think ultimately I never lost confidence because I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do on most of those plays, and the guys stuck with me on offense, and I was telling them, hey man, I'm good, just hang in there, and I'm good. I'm gonna have this thing figured out, and they stuck with me.
Do you think when he said stick with me, do you think he also said look, what are you going to do? Go to Hendon Hooker? Stop it. Come on, I'm going back out there.
I like that he said I was doing what I was supposed to do on most of those plays. It's like outside of the 5 times you threw it to the other team. Now, to be fair, it was 4 because one was a Hail Mary at the end. Sure, not going to blame you for that. But it was 4 picks, and they weren't great.
Right. And by the way, and there were definitely a handful of throws where like he short-armed it. And I don't know if he was under pressure, but it felt like he was way off target as well. I was watching the game from the stands. My parents, we ended up going to the game, and so I didn't see a lot of all the replays because I'm literally watching it live. It was a great game, great atmosphere, by the way. I highly recommend seeing a game in Houston. They do a really good job just in the stadium and everything like that. He didn't.
He has these games.
It was dicey.
He has these games kind of where it just seems like the ball doesn't come out of his hands, right?
The play Jameson Williams got hurt on when they showed the replay, it was just a wobbler. It's like a complete duck.
At times.
It was actually amazing that he caught that, and then he got hit from each side and got hurt because of how long the ball hung in the air. But it was literally just wobbling the whole way.
It's like he goes through these phases where he just has the yips. It was the same on Thanksgiving against the Packers last year, and at least this time they were able to overcome it. Because I think they are a much better team than they were last year. And credit to Goff. He clearly doesn't lose confidence in himself. It's just this weird mechanical thing that just kind of rears its head sometimes. And they were bad picks. They weren't all tip balls or anything. And one was more like a strip sack fumble, but he got strip sack fumbled. It was strange, but he was able to get through it, and they'd earned their win by the end. Though they probably was pass interference on that final.
But I mean, again, I think this game, and even if you played in a league that doesn't count interceptions, because there's some leagues where quarterback scoring doesn't count interceptions. So even if you played in a league like that, it's still 240 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Doesn't really get any rushing as well. It's his second straight game with under 10 fantasy points. Again, that's including the interceptions. And I think he's a better real life quarterback than fantasy asset these days, right? My best bet on Sunday Night Football was under 30 and a half passing attempts, and we had to sweat it to the very end. He ended up with exactly 30. So, never in doubt. But I certainly didn't expect 5 picks, but whatever. The bet cashes. But the most important game is that he's had only 1 game this entire season. It continues that trend of having more than 30 pass attempts. That was that week 2 game where he had to throw it a ton. It's just not a high volume offense. And, he's doing enough to keep Amon-Ra relevant, the running backs, and the offense floating, but it just doesn't feel like Goff, who we thought was kind of a big fantasy year, is just anything more than kind of a bye week fill-in in the right matchup.
Yeah, the team's just too good. They're too good with the run game. It's too diversified. Overall, the defense is better than it was last year, I think, even without Aiden Hutchinson. But at the moment, it's just Goff. There's no path really to high volume unless the defense really regresses and he's playing in all these shootouts.
The good news is,
he turned it over 5 times, and he still didn't throw more than 30 times in this game.
Yeah,
right? They were trailing. They were trailing for much of the game. Now, a lot of it, again, to your point about the defense, they stopped. They had to kick a lot of field goals in this one, right? The Texans couldn't convert, and we'll get to it there in a second. But C.J. Stroud did not play well either. No. I don't think. So anyway.
The good news is that the 2 guys that you start from, out of his pass catchers were fine. Amon-Ra St. Brown. He ends up with 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. And this is because they both scored. Sam Laporta, who got hurt, he had a sprained AC joint. We'll have more on that throughout the week through all our injury discussions. But Laporta got in the end zone too, and he only had 3 catches, but 66 yards and a touchdown. So Like you said, Matthew, this isn't a pass over expectation offense by any means, but at least the two main guys do consistently get the ball or got the ball last night.
Yeah, again, we'll see what the injury is with Laporta, but since week 8, by the way, a 24% target share for Laporta. Again, it's low volume,
right,
meaning the overall passing attack, but at least he's getting a nice share of the pie, such as it is over the last 3 weeks. Again, 24% target share, weeks 1 through 7, just 10%. So he's becoming more involved in the offense. When they took that deep shot to him, you're like, well, they're taking a deep shot. Laporta? All right. And so they're using him different ways. Hopefully he's healthy.
David Montgomery gets in the end zone as well, which really saves his fantasy night. He ends up having 12.6 fantasy points because of the touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs gets the carries, Jay. 19 carries for 71 yards. He also adds 37 receiving yards, but does not get in the end zone. So basically an average night for both of these guys that evened out.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, I don't know if poetic is the right word, but Dave Montgomery is the guy who gets in the end zone. Gibbs is more efficient and adds more volume through the air. I mean, these guys, they just have an incredibly high floor just because the team is so good. Like right now, this is one of the, however you want to rate them, the 4 best teams in the NFL right now, I think, are Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Detroit. In some order, Detroit's just going to be leading in a lot of games. They have an easy schedule coming up the next 3 weeks. Suspect that they're going to be 11-1. And these guys are just going to keep getting work on the ground, particularly because my sense is that deep down, kind of Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, they don't want to put the ball in Goff's hands because things like last night can happen, and they want to lean on the run as much as possible.
Well, also, by the way, and it takes, it just, in terms of first off, it's his mentality. It's Dan Campbell's mentality. It's also how they're built. That offensive line was built to run block. And also just like it all plays against each other. One of the reasons their defense can play so well is they're not on the field that much because Detroit is so good at ball, at time of possession and ball control. And so when your defense doesn't have to play like a zillion snaps, you're fresher and you can attack and get after it more as well. I felt like last night it feels like it's always been sort of an even split. I felt like last night they weren't running the ball. Credit to the Texans defensive line. They were dominating and they couldn't get the run game going, and finally like Gibbs popped a couple of ones that showed a little bit of juice, and it just felt like I don't want to say ride the hot hand because it's not like Gibbs was hot, but it just felt like his explosiveness and using him out of the backfield a little bit, and they did a couple of dump offs where they had some positive yardage. There just wasn't a lot there for Montgomery on the ground.
No, and also Gibbs is the better running back. He's the better player than Dave Montgomery. Dave Montgomery is a very important part of the offense, but ultimately, when the game was on the line, they went to Gibbs and Gibbs delivered.
And for how much they want to run it, they need Montgomery to be involved because 31 carries between them. You're not giving Gibbs 26, 27 carries. He's not built like that.
They ran the ball 31 times between them in a game they were losing the entire time, most of the time by double digits.
That's the offense.
And part of it was also like, should we let Goff throw interception number 4, or should we try to establish the run here a little bit as well? I was very disappointed because in our NBC Guillotine League, it's down to like the final 5, and it was me and Rotopat, and he had Gibbs and I had Montgomery, and so barring a Monday Night Miracle, I will be saying goodbye tonight. I'm on the way out. Yeah, I'm like 4. I'm done, and I'm like 5 points up, but. The person behind me, I think, has Tyreek Hill tonight. So.
And Kyron Williams, is that right?
No. Oh. That's the League of Assholes where stupid Dev has Kyron and Tyreek. Yeah. So that's a different league anyway. But it's a whole thing. Anyway, I will be saying goodbye to our sadly. I'm going to finish 5th. What's your team in there? The Vegemite sandwiches? What are you guys?
The Vegemite sandwiches. No, my team name is Naomi Watts. I can't remember why.
Naomi Watts. Well, it's
Australian actress.
Because she's a great Australian.
Australian British, but I think Australia claims her. We'll certainly claim her if we can.
She is. Unlike other people I may know, she is a great Australian.
Yes,
she is. Naomi Watts is somebody that Australia is proud of.
Yes, unlike me, Ray Gunn, and Paul Hogan.
Correct. Correct. That's factually correct. Yeah, and I mean, like, I get thrown under the bus adjacently because I did
yes.
right. Croc
Australian
3.
by extension.
Exactly. But anyway, so all right, so there we go.
On the Texans side, you said it, Matthew. Not a good night for C.J. Stroud. I mean, he only throws for 1 touchdown. That was to John Metchie, who had a big night. Great for John Metchie.
Great story coming back from cancer.
Yeah,
we love that. We love that.
But he got injured in college, and then he gets drafted in the 2nd round, and then he has cancer. Like, he's had a long, long road to recovery for a variety of reasons. So that was awesome. But I think the bottom line is this offense without Nico Collins, it looks like a shell of itself.
It does. And look, the offensive line has been bad and decimated and injured, and so Stroud is under pressure a lot. And what's happened is Stroud is now second-guessing himself. I think partially because he's under pressure a lot, partially because, to your point, He's been without Nico Collins for a while. Now he's had a couple games without Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell in and out of the lineup as well. So he doesn't really have as much experience with the guys that are out there than he expected to. So I think there's that. But like he just looks indecisive in the pocket. Like it drove me crazy because my parlay for Sunday Night Football was David Montgomery anytime touchdown cashed. Amon-Ra 60 yards, hit it on the nail. It was dicey, but that hit on the nail. But then 50 yards for Tank Dell. And he got 9 targets, as you see there. He got opportunities. There was a play where he was streaking down to the corner of the end zone, and he's wide open. He's betting his guy. And C.J. Stroud just double pumps and clutches for a second and takes 3 seconds too long to throw it. When he finally does throw it to Dell, the Lions are able to recover and they make the interception in the end zone. It was just an awful play.
Throw. It's very strange.
He needs to throw it quicker and he needs to throw it deeper. And that's a touchdown, and that would have gotten us there on the Tank Dell parlay. But more importantly, I thought it was emblematic of the way Stroud has played recently.
It is. Yeah. I did a tape breakdown for the Jets-Texans game on pregame yesterday where he missed, I think it was Mixon on a wheel route, which would have been a 60-yard touchdown. Yeah. And he was pressured. Laramie Tunsil gave up a pressure on the play, but instead of hanging in and stepping up and making the throw or shuffling, he spun around and turned his back to the play. And that's just one example from you, one example from me. He's just missing a couple big plays this year that it felt like he never missed those last year.
Would you back 60-1 that Bryce Young has a better career than C.J. Stroud?
60-1.
60-1. So more than a 2% chance, or more than a 1.5% chance.
That's the reason it's priced that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very unlikely, obviously.
Yeah.
But Bryce Young played better than C.J. Stroud this weekend.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.